Mr. Doherty ran into the living room. His wife was standing on a table.
"There's a mouse!"
she screamed.
"On the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry on the TV!"
Mrs. Doherty stabbed a finger at the sofa. A mouse was leaning against a cushion, tossing a lump of cheese up and down in one claw. It winked at Mr. Doherty.
"It laughed when the cat got hit with a frying pan."
Without even knowing what he was doing, Mr. Doherty climbed up onto the table alongside his wife.
"Don't get up here with me!"
she screeched.
"Do something!"
Mr. Doherty tried to look stern. "Now look, this is our house. We pay a sizable mortgage on it, and unless you're going to contribute in some way, like pay rent, I really think you should go." The mouse only switched channels with the TV remote. "Can you hear me?" said Mr. Doherty. "Is that our cheese, by the way?"
"James, it's a mouse. The only thing it will understand is a whack on the head with a spade. Get down and deal with it like a man."
But something about the mouse's demeanour worried Mr. Doherty. It clearly thought it was superior to humans. Maybe it was.
"For God's sake,"
said an exasperated Mrs. Doherty.
"Get the cat!"
"Ah, yes," Mr. Doherty shouted.
"Dumpling! Dumpling!"
A great, fat, marmalade cat waddled into the room. "There, girl. Dinner, pudding, whatever. Delicious, fresh rodent. Yum, yum. All served up on a nice sofa." The cat stared at the mouse, then up at Mr. Doherty, then jumped up on the table and into Mr. Doherty's arms. It meowed in fright. "Dumpling, do we feed you for this? Go catch that mouse and play with it in a cruel, heartless way, like a cat's supposed to." Dumpling jumped out of Mr. Doherty's arms and ran into the next room. She appeared a moment later, dragging a phone book. She dropped it by the table.
"Well done, Dumpling,"
said Mrs. Doherty.
"See? She wants you to clobber it with the yellow pages."
"Oh, now what's she doing?" Dumpling began frantically turning pages with her front claw. Mr. Doherty peered over the edge of the table. Pension schemes? Perfumes? Personal development courses? She's looking up pest control. Look, she's pointing to one. Eeek A Mouse, the pest pulverizing people. We are not nice to mice.
"Well, don't just stand reading over the cat's shoulder,"
spluttered Mrs. Doherty.
"Phone them."
10 minutes later, a large white van with ears came screaming up the drive and skidded to a halt where the Dohertys and Dumpling were waiting. The side of the van bore the legend, Eeek A Mouse, in large letters. A bald, fat man wearing overalls and holding a clipboard leapt out of the van. He spoke hurriedly. "I'm Hank from Eeek A Mouse. You say you got a fur ball on your sofa, eating cheese and watching TV? Sounds like a 726. Well, any luck, it's not a 934. Sign this piece of paper." Hank held out the clipboard. "What for?" asked Mr. Doherty. "It gives me permission to eject the mouse from your premises using force." "Good," said Mrs. Doherty, signing. "And this one. What's this for?" "This is for more force, if just force isn't enough. Okay, thank you." The Dohertys and a relieved-looking Dumpling stood and watched as Hank went up to the house and switched on a loudhailer. "Okay, little guy. We know you're in there. Come out with your paws up, and you won't get hurt. Well, not as hurt as you will if you stay inside anyhow. I'm Hank from Eeek A Mouse. I'm not here to parley. I'm not here to make any stupid, mousy compromises. I am here to kick ass. Your ass. So hand over the cheese, Buster, and start squeaking 2 words. I and surrender." Hank put the loudhailer back in the van. "Okay, I'm going in." Hank opened the back of the van and took out a large hoover. "We call it the Myson. A powerful suction pipe. Stick it next to the hole and it just slurps them up. In we go, baby. De-mouse this house." Hank ran up to the kitchen door, crashed it open, and sprang inside.
"Okay, Buster, the mice man cometh."
There was a loud, metallic boing. The mouse was on top of the refrigerator, holding a frying pan. Hank staggered out with a flat head. Strange coloured stars circled his head, and little tweeting birds. A cross-eyed Hank stood swaying on the lawn and spoke slurringly into his mobile phone.
"Hey, Brad, Hank here. We've got a 934. Yep, right here. Just gave me a pancake head. I need reinforcements. Now. Yeah, bring the heavy equipment, the mouse mangle, the rodent reorganizer, the squish-a-squeak."
Hank switched off his phone and reached for his clipboard.
"Are you sure you're okay?"
asked Mr. Doherty. "Your head's flat."
Sign this."
"What for?"
asked Mrs. Doherty. "This allows me to use lots and lots of force. Unbelievable amounts of force."
"But it's only a mouse, isn't it?" asked Mrs. Doherty.
"Only a mouse," Hank repeated. "Only a mouse. This is a 934, one of the most dangerous breeds of mouse that has ever existed. A new strain of super mouse that has evolved from a house mouse into breeding with a cartoon mouse."
"Pardon?"
"Basically, it's a Tom or Mickey that has escaped from a cartoon and is bred with a normal mouse. Someone carelessly drops up a piece of cheese near a video or DVD or some cartoon. The mouse inside sniffs the cheese, gets out of the film to eat it, and then meets a real mouse, and wham! You've got a big problem. You don't mess around with a 934.
"That's ridiculous." Mr. Doherty laughed nervously.
"Oh, yeah? Look at your cat."
Dumpling was praying. Another van with ears came hurtling up the drive, then another, and another. They all skidded to a stop. Doors slammed. Hulking men hurried up to Hank.
"934? You sure? 'Cause you sure. Look at his head."
The men grabbed Hank by his ears and pulled either side. There was a pop as Hank's head sprang back into shape. He pulled on a helmet. The men carried a fearsome array of weaponry.
"What is all this?"
stammered Mr. Doherty.
Hank smirked. "Mouse bombs. Light the tail, push it in the hole, and bang! The whisker splitter, a guided sawmill which is programmed to chase a mouse anywhere with a whirling blade. It slices and dices mices. A portable 16-ton weight that drops on anything that squeaks. Machine guns, carving knives, and a mousetrap loaded with a piece of cheese. Man, in we go!"
With a blood-curdling yell, the posse of men charged towards the house.
"I hope they wiped their feet before they went charging in over the carpets with their muddy boots,"
said Mrs. Doherty. For a moment, the Dohertys listened to breaking glass, machine gun fire, and yells. From window to window of their house, upstairs and down, they saw silhouettes of mouse catchers race about, jumping up and down and swatting with a variety of weapons.
"I should stop this,"
said Mr. Doherty, and walked towards the house. Through the living room window, he saw the most extraordinary scenes. Pursued by a circular saw, a mouse slid down the banisters, whizzed acrobatically round the handle of an umbrella, and looped up to grab a lampshade in the ceiling. The saw, meanwhile, soared through the stairs, and as the mouse catchers were on the top steps, they crashed from ceiling to floor and landed on top of each other in a pile. The saw then chased the men round the room, soaring through the dining room table and numerous chairs. When Hank was cornered by the saw and squeaked in fright, a 16-ton weight dropped on his head. Moments later, he slid from beneath the weight, totally flat, and rolled up like a blind. At this, the men gave up and fled from the house. One had bullet holes in him that you could see daylight through. Another was shaped like a concertina and played discordant notes as he walked. Hank unfolded on the lawn like a poster of himself and spoke into a flat mobile.
"Brad, emergency! We've got a lot of casualties. Mobilize everything. Everyone. Sign this."
"What for?" asked Mr. Doherty.
"This authorizes us to use insane amounts of force. Tanks, cruise missiles, nuclear bombs."
"On a mouse?"
"Get this, Buster. This is not a mouse. It is a mouse. A mouse! A mouse! It's a furry freak of nature, a scary, hairy super rodent with a grudge that only 10,000 generations of mice persecuted by humans could generate. If we don't stamp it out, it will breed a plague of super mice that will take over the universe and... There was a loud, rumbling noise. The driveway shook. Tanks burst through the Doherty's fence and ploughed across the lawns. Armoured personnel carriers roared up the drive. Mrs. Doherty screamed, "My flower bed! Whatever's going on?" Hank laughed. "Whoa, lady, just doing my job." "Look," said Mr. Doherty. He was blasted off his feet by multiple explosions. Missiles and shells rained on the house. Several jets flew over and launched missiles into the roof. The whole place went up in a mushroom cloud of smoke. After several minutes of non-stop attack, the forces of Eeek A Mouse went silent. Mr. and Mrs. Doherty picked themselves off the floor. They were both black and smouldering. They looked at the empty, smoking space where their house had been in horror. "Well," said Hank, with an air of efficiency, "we got rid of your mouse. I'll just make out a docket that'll be, My house?" wailed Mrs. Doherty. "Cruise missiles, grenades, bomber rental." "What have you done to my house?" she gasped. "Tank hire plus labor. Let's see, that's, €4 million plus VAT at..." The great cloud of dust and smoke settled. Mr. Doherty tottered towards where his house had been. The staff of Eeek A Mouse looked on happily. Nothing was left. Nothing. Except the sofa. The sofa and the television. And sat on the sofa, tossing a lump of cheese up and down in the air, was a mouse. "It's still there." "What?" Hank gulped. "It's still watching TV." The many men in overalls looked at each other and then leapt into each other's arms. "Eeek!" they shouted. "A mouse!" In terror, they stampeded away. They leapt into tanks, vans, personnel carriers, and drove off even faster than they arrived. Dumpling leapt out of Mr. Doherty's arms and onto the back of one of the vans, clinging desperately to the bumper as it vanished down the drive. Mr. and Mrs. Doherty approached the sofa. The mouse patted the sofa beside him. Mr. Doherty sat down. Mrs. Doherty sat beside Mr. Doherty. The two humans sat dazed on a sofa in the middle of smoking dereliction, watching a cartoon. When it finished, the mouse switched off the television. It looked up at the Dohertys, threw them the lump of cheese and squeaked, "That's all, folks!" and walked off through the smouldering garden, humming, and walked off through the smouldering garden, humming,